Hey, what is going on, everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're going to be jumping into another session of Epic 7 Now today. Got some more first impressions for you guys. That's right, this time around, we're going to be taking a look at Lone Wolf Peira, and boy oh boy does she have an amazing design. She really, resembles Last Rider Crow and like a counterpart here, and that's really cool. She is actually a dark support unit, but we'll get into her skills in just a bit. We'll first take a look at her star sign, and her animation is absolutely stunning, so cannot wait to get a copy of her and to showcase her to you guys. So if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe because you don't want to miss out on that. Lone Wolf Peira, though, over here with a 121 base speed. She is a dark warrior with the Aquarius star sign, and that should actually ring a bell in terms of stats for you guys, because this is the exact same stat line as Conquer Lilius. That's right, Conquer Lilius here, one of the best units out there in the past seasons. Definitely not anymore, but she is incredible because of her Vigor buff that she grants to all allies, which increases attack and defense by 30%. It's not dispellable. She grants extra turns to herself, right? She has the ability to provoke, she provides barriers, she dual attacks, and she was just insane utility for a variety of different teams. So she is a very comparable unit to ML Peira, I would say here. And C. Lilius was able to be used in both slow teams and fast teams. For fast teams, you set up with the Vigor buff, right? You'd be able to control the tempo of the match, right, really early on, set up for extra damage for your units, and her non-attack skills enabled units like Ida to come in as a bridge unit and then take over the momentum from there. If you're playing a slow team with Conquer Lilius, you're using her to Vigor buff and bolster defense of your units. The attack is obviously going to be useful, but the defense is what really matters. You make your team really bulky, you have your dual attacks to kind of tempo and beat up your opponent, you have the redirected provokes that will help keep the damage off of your main DPSs and onto your knights that are tanking, and as well as giving barriers out to help nullify damage for your team. So Conquer Lilius was amazing, and I think pretty much almost a one-to-one comparison here with our Peira. So coming back here with Peira, she has a 121 base speed, no crit or crit damage awakenings here. She has a bit of effectiveness here, and her team imprint is going to be attack percent. So definitely attack percent can be very nice for helping your units get some more damage out there. And of course she has that 18% HP imprint for herself too, kind of just like C. Lilius. Both the imprints here are almost basically exactly the same too, right? The HP is going to help her just be a bit more bulky. Alright, so let's jump into her skill set. For her skill 3, Hound the Indolent, it dispels 2 debuffs from all allies before granting Rampage to Dark Elemental allies for 3 turns. Grants Swift Attack to all allies except for the caster, and then grants an extra turn. So this entire S3 here is actually just a copy of Ahmed's skill 3. If you guys are not familiar with Ahmed, because she hasn't really been used too much in recent seasons, and well, the advent of things like Bunny Dom's buff actually made her kind of irrelevant. But yeah, she's also really weak to things like Fire Politis and Abyssal Euphine. But if you're not familiar with Ahmed here, Ahmed was the only other one with a Swift Attack buff. Swift Attack says that at the end of the turn, you increase combat readiness by 50%, and this is dispelled when the skill is, the effect is activated, right? Ahmed also ends up dispelling 2 debuffs from an ally, except for herself. So this effect here, these 2 effects here, are actually basically just Ahmed's whole shtick, her whole thing. So they're basically like, hey, you remember Ahmed? Well, we're basically making a better version of her here, because now you don't have to use a it's a non-attack skill, but you don't have to just do it on one unit, and you're also not really hindered by Ahmed's weakness of having to go for an S2, right? Her S2 here would boost your combat readiness and give the skill nullifier and grants an extra turn. This extra turn effect is actually very similar to what Peira has, right? In terms of this S3. So yeah, you can definitely use ML Peira in Ahmed-like teams moving forward, which is kind of cool to see a a return of the swift attack buff, but swift attack buff for the entire team is going to be absolutely nuts. It's a very strong effect, right? 50% combat readiness. If you pair it up with units that already give themselves combat readiness, for example, Ice Kisei, it's an outdated example, but her S3 gives her 50% combat readiness when she uses it. Paired up with swift attack buff, you get 100% combat readiness. So when you use her S3, she will essentially take an extra turn, and then you can come in with an S2 and deal tons of damage. So this is a really great comboing momentum skill that you can utilize, and the fact that she grants herself an extra turn is also really strong. It is countered by Bunny Dom though, so do keep that in mind. The Rampage buff here with the Dark Elemental allies, it's situational because it only buffs Dark Element allies, but this buff doesn't restrict any of the other stuff here, the swift attack buff, the extra turn, the cleansing, right? But Rampage here is pretty good because it increases speed and evasion by 20%, and there's a lot of evasion units right now in the meta. Obviously, you have things like your new kid Aiden, right? The Dark Aiden that's come out, but you also have Arbiter Vildred, right? That you can utilize this on. You can use this with things like Remnant Violet as well. Any dark units. You can't really use this with things like Fire Flan, obviously. Not that she needs it, she has 100% evasion anyway, but this will bring all of your units a little bit closer to 100%. This 20% on top of most units which have 50% evasion, 20% from an artifact, essentially means that you have 90% evasion, so still a 10%. Of course, Smilegate can't give us this buff to 30%, right? You're gonna have a 10% chance to get hit, and get hit we will. I'm sure that's going to happen. So we see here in this demo, this ML Peira actually goes before the enemy ML Politis. You see it's a very fast aggressive team. There is things like ML Shu in here, which doesn't really make a whole ton of sense, but you see the Tomoka, right? You can kind of expect this type of faster paced team. Closer Charles is back there too. The evasion stacks with his evasion buff over there. So Peira goes for the S3, grants an extra turn, and then she can S1. So we'll talk about the S1 in just a second. For her skill 2, it's Time to Rampage. Increases her evasion by up to 50% with skill enhancements. At the start of the turn, she increases an attack by 20%, which can stack up to 5 times. And at the end of the turn, she increases combat readiness of all allies by 10%. So the main thing here is that the increase of attack by 20% is basically free. When you start the match, you're going to get this. It's not something that's conditional tied to using a skill. For example, Sylvan Sage Vivian gains attack by using her skill 1. After she uses her skill 1, she boosts her attack stat. Here, you just have to take the turn, so it's really encouraging you to build as fast as possible and to, well, go first, right? The other thing is, at the end of the turn, you increase combat readiness of all allies by 10%. This part is kind of nuts, because the combat readiness gain here is going to stack with every time you take a turn. Keep in mind her skill 3 gives her an extra turn, so when she does her skill 3, you push up everyone by 10%. When you take your extra turn, you do your skill 1 afterwards, you're going to push everyone up by another 10%. That's 20% boost, and that's nuts because you do not need a bridge unit. This is an opener that can open for your team and act as a bridge unit at the same time. I can definitely see her getting banned quite a bit, right? The other thing with her evasion here, 50% evasion at the start of the match. This is not counting her S3 buff. Let's assume that there's a Zio on the other side and you don't take first turn and you can't buff. When you're going up against Zio, who can nullify speed, essentially, and contest anybody, the only units he can't really hit are units that are stealth. Well, if you have evasion, there is a chance he can hit you, but it's a 50% chance. So half the time you're going up against Zio and he tries to S3 you, you're not going anywhere, right? You're not getting hit, you're not getting pushed back, you're not getting silenced as long as you dodge. And if you dodge here, you're basically taking the next turn after Zio if you build her fast enough, right? That means Zio, if he's unsuccessful in hitting, probably is not going to have any bridge unit come in unless he's paired up with like a Fire Flan maybe, but even then, right? Fire Flan needs to be incredibly fast in order to cut you, so keep that in mind. So the Zio really can't counter the Peira here, where traditionally he'd be able to counter anyone who goes fast, like C. Lilius, for example. The other thing that you can do is you can put Peira on an artifact like Snow Crystal. Snow Crystal makes it so, here, let me pull it up for you guys so that you can see. Snow Crystal is a fantastic artifact, actually, and I do have it on a shoe, I believe. So yeah, Snow Crystal right here. says that you have critical hit resistance, which doesn't really matter all too much, but after the caster suffers a non-critical hit, which includes dodging things, because if you evade something, you're not getting crit, you increase your combat readiness by, and if you have a 15 plus 15 snow crystal, it's going to increase by 12%. So that is already really nice, right? Encouraging the Zeo to attack her, and if he doesn't crit, his S3 will never crit, by the way, you will gain combat readiness, right? So you'll still be able to take the turn. Another thing that you can do to put on her, let's say that you're afraid of getting provoked or something. You're going first, you're going to get debuffed, right? Another fantastic artifact to have on her, because she's a warrior, is Sweet Miracle. As Conquer Liliuses were running this at some point as well. Sweet Miracle, it not only increases your health, that makes you bulkier, but at the start of the turn has a 100% chance to decrease debuff durations by 1 turn. So if you're asleep, if you're stunned, if any of those things happen, Sweet Miracle says, we don't really care. You take your Peira, take your turn, take your extra turn, push up your team. 20% boost for your entire team with the Swift Attack buff is nuts. Right? It is absolutely nuts. And if you're using dark units, they also get a speed boost from her undispellable buff. So yeah, she has quite a bit of utility in terms of her artifacts that she can use, which is really, really nice. Right? So let's go ahead and head back to the skill sets here. With her skill set, yeah, that's her passive. It is incredible. I honestly don't know what to say. I don't know what they're thinking of giving basically an opener the ability to bridge other units. But again, she can be used in both slow teams and fast teams. For faster teams, she's probably going to be used more for the evasion stacking buff effect, and for slow teams, this evasion stacking. For fast teams, she's really going to be used to just keep up tempo, right? The swift attack buff, you're going to be taking turns, cycling, and basically cleaving your opponent down. Her skill 1 is called Bash. She attacks the enemy with a 60% chance up to a 75% chance with skill enhancement to decrease defense for 1 turn. A successful attack inflicts additional damage proportional to the caster's attack. And if you soul burn, which only costs 10 souls, you attack all enemies, and this attack does not trigger a dual attack. So the cool thing about this, well, one, it's a defense break, which is really, really strong. 75% just chance to defense break on an S1 is insane. Couple that with the fact that if you soul burn, it's an AoE defense break, right? This is nuts. Now, she doesn't strip your opponent's buffs at the start of the match, right? Her S3 doesn't strip anything from the opponent, which means you're not really going to be getting rid of immunity buffs. So if you're fighting an ML Peira, you're probably going to want immunity on a lot of your slower units, right? Otherwise, you're just going to get absolutely destroyed by getting defense broken here. And this defense break is going to spell disaster because everyone's getting pushed up by 20% combat readiness, and they're going to hurt really bad. The other thing is that she does splash damage, right? This splash damage that happens anytime she successfully lands a hit. So think about Ubirus' Tooth because it scales with attack here. But again, you can, if you soul burn, that's an AoE splash. It's going to be pretty decent, especially because her attack is going to scale up 20% 5 times, so it's 100% scaling on her attack stat. So let's say you didn't build too much attack on her. Let's say you build 2,000 attack. It's going to be like 4,000 by the end of the match, which is insane. Plus Frenzy. Frenzy also builds up your attack. But anyway, Peira's gonna go. There's a soul burn demonstration here. You see Polita's taking 1,000, ML Huayong over there taking about 1,100, and Tywin taking 3,000. Even the Flan getting hit there with the 1,000 damage. But we're gonna see, look at that, extra damage here, boom, coming out. So an extra 700 damage onto this Huayong. We see an extra 1,000 something damage on this ML Politis, or I think an extra 1,200, and then Tywin also taking a bit more. He's absorbing some of the damage, I believe. I think he's on Aureus. Let me double check right here. See if he's on Aureus. No, he's actually not on Aureus. I take that back. So yeah, no Aureus there. That's okay. The main thing that we're seeing is that her splash damage not going to be too considerable, at least at the start of the match. We don't know the stats of this Peira. We saw that she doesn't really have much HP, about 10, 11k HP, right? So we're going to assume that she does have a bit of effectiveness and a bit of attack. Otherwise, I think they can be building her much more bulky than she really is here. But you're going to see that, yeah, this buff for the things like Closer Charles and such is going to be insane, and we're going to see how she works in her combat demo, right? But that's going to be it for her skill sets here. I think she is going to be absolutely insane. Again, the fact that an opener can be a bridge unit that has an AoE defense break that gives the team so much tempo with the swift attack buff is nutty. So let's break down the combat demo here, right? While we're talking about like preferable sets as well as teammates. So looking here, her best set is definitely going to be speed set. You actually don't need effectiveness on her, not much. You can build effectiveness on her for that defense break if you really want to, but most units nowadays, again, don't really have too much effect resistance, right? If you're looking for units with effect resistance, they're mostly going to be hovering around 100 effect resistance. So getting something like 85% effectiveness is good enough. It means you don't need an effectiveness ring. You can actually either go for an attack ring or an HP ring, whether you want to do some more splash damage or be bulkier. I personally would say that if you're a bit bulkier, probably going to be a little bit better for staying power, but if you're playing super aggressively and you don't want to give your opponents turns anyway, going for attack is probably the way to go, just to chip your opponent down little by little, right? So yeah, speed set, and then any offset pieces, just make her as fast as possible. Again, things like Zio cannot contest her, which is huge. And of course, if you're playing something fast like her, you're probably going to want to ban Harsetti. Right, that just comes with playing any faster type of team or unit. Okay, but when it comes to her teammates, we see this demonstration is using Closer Charles, who benefits from the evasion buff that he gets at the start of the match. He also gives himself an extra 3-turn evasion buff here, which is kind of nice. He's a decent bridge unit to use with Peira, just because he can push up the team further, so if you have slower units, they can take the turn. But look at Charles. Look at Charles, he gained 50% combat readiness, and he pushed himself up with his own S3, right? So he's already about to take the turn. He's lapping this Fire Flan and this Bystander Huayang already, which is nuts. This Bystander Huayang is going to proc off the ML Shu. Again, ML Shu is not really great synergy here, necessarily. The speed buff's okay. So the reason why I'd say she's okay is because she has a speed buff here. The speed buff stacks with Peira's buff, so you get a ton of speed, which means you're going to be turn cycling quite a bit. And then Shu actually ended up pushing up the Charles here, because she actually hit Tywin below 30% of his health. 40% of his health, I think, is a new threshold. But yeah, so Charles is going to be able to take the turn. You can see the tempo already. Charles taking his second turn here without the opponent doing a single thing. The opponent has not moved at all. So you see Tomoka killing, pushing up the team again. Closer Charles going to be taking the turn. Look at this. ML Shu is already lapping back around. That is insane. Tomoka is definitely going to be a decent unit to use with the Peira. Any unit that scales with speed, I believe Tomoka, she at least used to have speed scaling. I don't have her, so I can't really speak much to her here. But yeah, if they scale with speed, they're definitely going to benefit from the speed buff from the ML Shu, but also from Peira's unique buff over here. Tomoka's going to come in. We're just going to finish things off. And yeah, it's a pretty nice demonstration. So the main thing here is, if you're looking at Peira and you're trying to use her for her evasion, then you do have quite a few options as well. So let's go ahead and turn our attention to the Epic 7 client so I can show you guys some more examples of things that you can use with Peira. Peira can definitely be used with BBK, one of the most annoying units right now in the meta. She's very commonly picked, and her immortality, her double immortality, makes her staying power on the field enormous. So the fact that you can run her with an evasion artifact, right? You can run her with a lot of people are running her with things like Shepherd of the Hollow, for example, because the lower the health you have, the more damage you have, and you have 20% extra evasion on top of that. Some people are running Shepherd of Chaos as well. I don't know if I have a copy of Shepherd of Chaos, but Shepherd of Chaos is also one that the lower your HP is, the more your, oh, there it is, Shepherd of Chaos. Lower your HP is, your evasion and defense increase by up to 40%. So this on BBK is actually kind of nutty, because if you get really low, right, if someone hits you down to like 1 HP to proc your immortality, let's say they're trying to hit you and strip your immortality so they can kill off your BBK. you get 40% evasion when you're down that low, and with Peira's buff, you have 60% evasion, so more than a 50% chance for your opponent to miss whatever crucial strip that they're trying to go for on your BBK's immortality is kind of nuts, right? So BBK, definitely a fantastic unit to be using there, and she is dark, right? So she benefits from a speed buff as well. So some people have like 200 speed BBKs with a lot more damage than mine. They can benefit from that speed buff to go, let's say, take a turn after an Taiwan AoE defense break, or hey, after Peira does an AoE defense break, because she has that in her kit. Another unit would be Arbiter Vildred. If you're playing slower team or a faster team, it doesn't really matter, but Arbiter Vildred can definitely benefit from the evasion. If you're running something like Moonlight Dreamblade, that's already 40% evasion when it's stacked with Peira's buff, and if Arby had died, he comes back, he gets Archdemon's Might, and Archdemon's Might increases his evasion by 50%. So imagine a degen Arby like this, right, coming back. You're going to have a ton of evasion. Now, obviously, when he comes back, let's say he dies, he comes back, he's not going to have Peira's unique buff on him anymore. However, let's say that he comes back and then your Peira is able to do something. Let's say your opponent goes really aggressive, kills your Arby, Arby comes back, right? He's there, he takes his turn, and then let's say your ML Peira comes afterwards, you can get him up to 90% evasion. Okay, that is a very niche case scenario, but you can get him to 90% evasion, or at least, at the very least, with Moonlight Dreamblade, you at least have 40% evasion at the start, right? It makes him much harder to kill, 40% chance for your opponent to miss their hits, their debuffs, and all that. Well, and if you're on a counter set, that's even better, right? They're missing, they're not dealing as much damage, they're unable to kill him, they're going to keep hitting him, more chances for you to counter. We already talked about how she's good with Closer Charles, right? Synergizes quite well with him as a bridge unit. Remnant Violet, though, as well. Really, really nice. If you run Remnant Violet, he's on, you know, his passive is 50% evasion. You have 20% evasion here. Peira gives another 20% evasion, so he's at 90% evasion, and he's going to be hitting pretty hard. I need to re-gear mine here, but I think he's a pretty decent unit to use with her. Another unit that I think can have some good potential to use with her is Assassin Cartuja. He is dark. He will benefit from the extra 20% evasion, and Assassin Cartuja here in his passive, he has 50% evasion, right? He also increases the evasion of all allies except for himself by an extra 20%, which is really good. This means you can technically have 100% evasion Rylets, Arby's, and BBKs, right? You can technically have that, or not BBK, but BBK can have up to, what? If you use Shepherd or Chaos, you have the 20% from the Peira, you have 20% here, you get 80% evasion BBK, which is insane. It's disgusting. And my Assassin Cartuja here is on a successful evading, he increases combat readiness of all allies except for himself by 10%. So he would end up getting, what is it, 70% chance to evade, right? 70% chance evasion for Cartuja, as well as pretty much 100% chance of evading for everyone else. You can build a pretty cool, fun evasion team, and I think it'd be pretty funny. And I think I might try that eventually. I might try that. But yeah, Assassin Cartuja, definitely a fantastic teammate. So a unit that doesn't work with her really well is going to be obviously the what's her face? The Huayang, ML Huayang, because ML Huayang is not a unit that can get any buffs or debuffs on her, so you can't get the swift attack buff, all that good stuff on there. Peira's unique buff and things. You can't really help ML Huayang there, but yeah. Otherwise, I think there's quite a few units that can really benefit, especially these thieves. These dark thieves here are the big winners. Obviously, you can use Tomoka. Tomoka's going to be pretty solid as well, and you can pair up with a lot of other degenerate dark units, right? Imagine a Blood Moon Haste with a little bit of evasion in his kit, right? It's just going to be really, really annoying to deal with. I don't know if there's any other major dark units that can benefit from the evasion all that much. I mean, you can obviously have like your Assassin Sids, Acolis, and stuff that can benefit too, but other than that, I think those are the main heavy hitters that are gonna, see a little indirect buff here, right? But yeah, anyway, let me know what you guys think about ML Peira in the comments down below. I know a lot of people are really upset that she is so loaded in her kit, but hey, we can't really do anything to change that right now. So I will do my best to showcase her to you guys in Arena and in RTA. So if you don't want to miss out on that, do be sure to subscribe. So with that being said though, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.